Hey, thank you guys for tuning in to FOSA Spotlight. You're in the right place if you want to be inspired to be empowered. I am your host. Yeah, you know it, Crystal Boyd. What a pleasure it is to be here once again. And as always, you know what we do. We keep you inspired to be empowered. And boy, do I have a subject matter for today. This topic is so nice. I think you guys are just going to like it. And I'm going to make use of it without a shadow of a doubt. So, with no hesitation, what is the subject matter? I'll give you a hint. It's kind of scary. And I do mean just kind of, because we don't give stuff power over here. That's what we don't do. We just don't give stuff power. The topic of this episode is fear. Yeah, it's a common word, and you know what? Even an acronym, and I'm going to get into that later. But that first things first, I always like to start off with a definition. Oh, it's basic, but it's useful. Can't deny its usefulness. So, an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. Yeah, let that sink in. Now that you've let that sink in, let's talk about this acronym. I got two of them. Maybe you guys heard it before, maybe you haven't. So the first one is forget everything and run. Oh my gosh. I was completely taken back by this one. Forget everything and run? Excuse me? Where do we do that at? Surely not around here, right? That's right. We don't do that. And so the second one is face everything and rise. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the latter. Definitely not the first one. It's just a little bit too much for me, because I'm convinced that the only way out of something is through it. Like, how many times are you going to cut things short because you're avoiding circumstances and situations that really just tend to reappear unless you address them? And something that is that I think about fear that just comes to mind. That's right, another acronym is false evidence appearing real. Oh my goodness, I think we got another one right there. That is juicy enough for me. False evidence that is appearing real. How many times does something seem real, but we get to it and it's not? Something to consider biblically. And I probably have said this before, but you always know when I say something and bring it back, oh my goodness, it has relevance. So, in the Bible it says, as I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Now let's just talk about shadow of death. And much more, let's emphasize shadow. What is a shadow often? I'm not going to go to a definition, but let's really think about it. When we see a shadow, what can we automatically assume is the reason for that shadow, or what is the cause? It's something so small. Every time it is never as enormous as that shadow. Never. And I heard a pastor preach on this, but it was just so much relevance in it, because notice it looks like that fear makes something bigger than what it is. And then the text goes on to say, I will fear no evil, for thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And I'm convinced the rod and the staff means that God's power, God's sovereignty, and your trusting in him is what is the key to deliverance and being able to find some peace in that situation, so you don't have any fear. But I tell you something about fear. If you allow it and you don't try to shortcut it, it'll run its course. It will. as you recall, I tell you guys these stories, but thinking back on when I moved to Atlanta and before I even moved, I was tired of the same thing. I was fearful of change. I'm pretty sure that was. And the unknown. Oh my gosh. To go to a whole nother state, a whole nother city, know absolutely no one, okay? And in a new business, all that. It was so much concern there that it almost was fearing, really. And as I told you guys before, I lean towards Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 7. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Yeah, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make those paths straight. Now, don't go thinking it's going to be a cakewalk. Because I've thought that before. I'm like, oh God, this way, and it's like not going to be any trouble. Okay, so acknowledging him does not mean it won't be trouble along the way, but when you go through trouble, you won't go through it alone. He'll be right there with you and helping you see through. But what it was is, that I'm thankful for that experience in moving. Whether it was Atlanta, Timbuktu, Walla Walla, Washington, I'm just glad of the fact that I was able to leave my comfort zone. So Atlanta doesn't symbolize what, I guess it would to most. I'm from the country, so a lot of people move to major cities and, that's all for them. But, I say the biggest thing it broke was my comfort zone. And being able to say, hey, I'm okay with being uncomfortable for a little while. I'm okay with exposing myself and peeling back the layers and asking myself, like, what is it that I fear? Am I fearing that I'm not going to be able to stand strong? Am I going to lose something? Am I not going to be able to have a home, or I can't afford my home? All those type of things that can creep in. But I started to give rise to what God can do. So I emphasize when you're in those situations to really, really just hone in on what God is showing you. A lot of times, especially if you've been prayerful through the whole way and you reach a point of adversity, challenge, it's not meant to deter you. Because a lot of times there's tests within that. How do you know what you're made of if you don't go through things? Like, even I had to go through things and I felt like, oh my goodness, Crystal, you dealt with that way better than what I imagined you would. And that's where I get to see where, all my reading, all my prayer has really taken hold. And the peace that surpasses understanding can come to you, and does. Because I've had situations, I'm sure my listeners have had situations too. And the beautiful thing about those situations is you get to see how you deal with things, how you respond. If it's going to be negative, and if it's going to get a rise out of you. And thankfully, if you're really tuned in and you allow that spirit to do what it needs to do, then guess what? And you let that be where you're led, how you're led, you'll be just fine. Other things to consider is that fear can spread. I'm not sure if you know that, but if you're fearful, unless you're explaining or praying about it, don't spread your fear. I'm just saying, because you're scared of something, it can easily spark a whole lot of fear in the atmosphere. And I'll give you an example, because I've always listened to health books, self-help, and things like that. So I'm listening to one of these, and we'll take it for face value. All right, meaning like I don't recall the author, but I recall the story and all that good stuff. So I'll share. It's an army. It's a man that's in the army, and he's out at a camp, and he's scared about like being bombed on. Like they're in the middle of the desert, all this other stuff. He is so fearful. So he goes, it's the middle of the night, they're sleeping, He's asleep. Whether he was sleeping or he had a nightmare or whatever, he envisioned that they were being bombed, they were being attacked, under attack, all that. And he literally woke up everybody else, got them fearful, all that other stuff. And all of that just sparked from one person being terribly scared, erupted in I don't know how many being scared too, at least for a moment. And I'll give another example. How many times have we seen somebody and we're out and or around someone and they just start running, right? I've seen this on TikTok where somebody just starts running and then they start running too. That's how quick fear can really, really spread. But I wonder why positivity, faith should spread that easy too. But I believe we have to fight a little harder for that capacity. I'll speak about fighting on another episode. It's really good because my fighting ain't like how you thinking about fighting, but it's useful. But yes, fear can definitely spread, and we want to keep that down to a minimum as much as possible. And I like thinking about Peter when he was walking on water. That was such an incredible part of the New Testament. I just gotta acknowledge that. And it's really something that really speaks to fear. So when Jesus calls Peter out on the water, I believe that this happened physically, but I do believe that we're called to think about the Bible context in a way that fits for us. So what is water for you today? What is God calling you out on where you're looking at the water, looking at the overwhelmingness of the situation, but refusing or paying little attention to him and keeping your eyes on him? Because when we do take our eyes and put it on the situation, the circumstance, you just give more focus to it, more attention, more energy. And that is going to create a whole negative everything right there. But the more you focus on God, the more you understand that he's for you and you're allowing him to direct your paths, what much more do you have to fear? What much more should you have to fear? I believe that is enough within itself to cast out fear. Because perfect love casts out fear. That's something to rely on. And I go so far to say, if I haven't already, acknowledge your fear. I find myself in that situation and I have to say, Crystal, what are you scared of? What are you afraid of? And I have to peel back the layers because I got two ways. I want to see this life in two ways. I can go about life avoiding things, or I can face them. And I don't want my belief to be in vain. And if I got to go out one way, I choose to go out believing. Instead of giving attention to the fear, the negative, and everything else, why don't I give energy to the positive? Acknowledge God's presence here. Acknowledge that he's for me. No one can be against me. Acknowledging that he's directing my paths. No, you're going to go through some hills, some valleys, and everything else. But guess what? He'll still be with you. So those are things to definitely consider. And you know what? I don't usually do this, but I wanted to hit y'all with some benefits, like some reasons to believe in. Okay, so I got 3 reasons why you should not forget everything and run. We're not doing that, okay? I got reasons for you to face everything and rise. Okay? Number 1, you'll be wiser and stronger. Who doesn't want that? Oh my goodness, it's a dream come true. You're wiser, you're stronger. You get to see your strength. You get to see your maturity and how you deal with something. It greater equips you to do even more things. Because now that you've conquered this, oh my goodness, what else? And second benefit is you've conquered what was really the problem. More than likely, if you face everything and rise, you'll see what the problem was. Sometimes that problem is as little as change. You're scared to change something because this is how it's always been. But great things usually don't come in your comfort zone. Don't be surprised when you get close to something that is life-changing, that everything comes up to make you fearful. Fearful is just to keep you at bay. So you'll never have the greatness on the other side because you never push past it. But you can. You can. And you can be thankful that you conquered that. Yeah, and that third point, to just bring the subject matter to benefits, is that you will be glad because you didn't let it deter you. You didn't let it deter you. You didn't let it change your path. You rose up, and you can be proud of that. You didn't let it change your mind. You didn't let, because you have obviously an option to avoid, to not go and face the thing that you're fearing. But just knowing that you did, how great is that? And I'll end it with one more sweet story. Another person I listen to, I think it's meaningfullife.org. Very, very, very nice person that does like speaking and always just really, really wise. And so he speaks on, he was a child and he was just scared to swim. Yeah, so he's by the pool. He puts his foot in the water, and another day he puts his legs in the water. He's still sitting on the side of the pool though, not fully in. And so he does this for a few more days. And one of his friends ends up pushing him in. Oh, that's cruel. Oh, it is. It is. And somewhere that's not the best thing, because it's probably ended up in a fatality. But let's just take this matter and think about the fact that sometime being pushed, thank God for friends that remind you or question, like, and say, hey, you're capable of doing this. You can go forward and be great. This is nothing to be scared of. This has little to no risk at all. And even if so, I know you got more than enough in you to come back from this. So as a friend, my friends know that I'm going to push them. There's no such thing as just retreating. If there's some fear there, we're going to acknowledge it and we're going to rise to the occasion. And my family knows that too. So my call to action for you all is, when you see false evidence appearing real, remember that acronym for earlier, you question it. You question its validity. Question if it's real. And push past that. And face everything and rise. Because you can and you should. You're fully equipped to handle everything every single day that comes your way. You won't be called without being equipped. There's no such thing as God putting something in your path that you're not going to be able to handle. If you just want God's assurity, tell him that. Ask for that. Look for it. Rely on it when you see it. And most of all, trust. It's been a pleasure. It always is. If you haven't already, be sure you like, subscribe, comment, share, connect with us on Facebook, like us on Instagram. We're on Twitter. You can follow us. We're certainly on TikTok and www.fosa.company. Check out our rest of our podcasts. We are on Spotify, but there's a link to Spotify on the FOSA website. Also, we're on YouTube, so check out our YouTube channel. It's been an honor and a privilege, as I said before. You guys continue to go forth and be great, and fear not.